everyone, and welcome to the Republic of Middle-Aged Men. And as usual, you have your three hosts. You've got myself, Tim, and you have Lachlan.
Howdy.
And Ruben.
Hello.
I've gone for another Furphy. I'm just loving this ale right now. I'm going to do my party trick of the old forearm open. And shout out to my cousin Craig for teaching me that when I was but a young man. And what are you guys drinking tonight? What do you got, Lachlan?
Mate, I've gone for a Kraken spiced rum, along with mixed in with some Bundaberg ginger beer. It's a good time.
That sounds
It's
good.
my father-in-law's special. Although he used to use the special Bundaberg Christmas spiced ginger beer.
Oh yeah, I can see that working.
Yeah, it's a pretty magic combo, especially on a Christmas summertime. Great drink for the afternoon on a hot day for sure.
Yum.
Nice.
How about you, Ruben?
Oh yeah, gin and tonic for me tonight. I've got a Gordon's dry gin. I know I always talk about the price, but I got a litre of it for a good price from Costco.
A litre of gin. Is it cheaper than petrol? Petrol's pretty expensive right now.
It's easily cheaper than petrol.
Oh wow!
No, it's not.
Yeah. How about just on that, Lachlan? How bad is fuel prices right now?
Mate, if I was using my car, I might be able to tell you, but I ain't going anywhere. So,
dude, I
think last time
I
it
was like
about
a cent
$1.80.
shy of $2 a litre.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was on the
Yeah,
way to
that's
work in the Rexy the other day, and
Mm.
it was just short of $2.
That is rude.
Mm.
That's
One
just
of my mates-
outright impolite.
One of my mates at work has the big Hemi 300C, and he doesn't get to use it every day because it does cost too much.
6.4 litre motor, I seem to recall.
Yes, it sounds glorious too. I would have it in a heartbeat, but
Totally.
yeah, you need a second job to pay for the fuel, I think. But we've all been there. So how are you guys coping with lockdown?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I think it's there's been a few obviously announcements about a couple of things easing up, so I think it's giving some people some hope, sort of, even if you got to wait a little while. But yeah, got my second jab last week as well, so that's good. All done. Wife got hers done as well. Neither of us sort of had any sort of ill effects from it, so that's good.
Nice.
No symptoms. Kept on going.
You must be one of the first people I've spoken to that hasn't had some sort of side effect for both.
Yeah. Look, I took some Advil basically upon getting it, right? I've got a friend who's a nurse, and she said just do that and take Advil for the first 24 hours and just cover you off. So look, I might have had like some mild symptoms or something like that had I not done that. But obviously, like, there was no sort of major symptoms for me or my wife. I was quite surprised. I mean, she kind of catches every bug that goes around, and if there's a hint of a cold amongst the kids, she'll be the first one to kind of pick it up. So I was surprised. Yeah, she didn't have any symptoms either. So, which was
nice.
Yeah, take that.
Yeah, bonus.
How about you, Rubes? How's lockdown?
Yeah, lockdown's all right. As I've said on previous podcasts, I still get to go to work, so it sort of doesn't really affect me too much, apart from not having barbecues at my place. But it's the middle of winter anyway, so I think it'd hurt a little bit more if it was during summer.
Yeah, I think we've had some cracking winter weather over the last few weeks too, which
For sure.
And this week again, like the weekend's been miserable, but then all week it's meant to be low to mid 20s, sunny. I'm like, oh,
It's all right. We had a fire pit in the backyard last night, and like the sky cleared up, and it was pretty pleasant. Kids had a good time, and Just kind of sat around and looked at the stars for a bit and toasted some marshmallows. Everyone had a good time.
I was going to ask if you did marshmallows. My kids are very big on the marshmallows.
Yeah, I mean, they're big into cooking them and not as big into eating them. You know, it's
Really?
it's more the novelty of like roasting them on the fire, and then they're like, "Here, Dad, do you want one?" I was like, "No, you eat it."
Sometimes the kids get those massive ones that are the size of a lemon.
Yep.
And I just don't see the point because you can't get them warm enough inside.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean, and yeah, I'm not big on marshmallows, but like I can have one or two or something like that if we're doing it by the campfire. But just the small ones, yeah. I couldn't do one of those big jumbo. They're insane. Those things, the size of your fist.
So, survey without notice. What's the best way to cook a marshmallow? Because growing up, used to just set them on fire and then blow them out, and then it's like instant. But now, my wife has convinced me that taking the slow and steady approach, of just sort of, rotisserie cooking, getting really gooey, so they start sliding down the stick by themselves. That's
sure.
I think that's pretty mint. But what's your style?
I would go that way as well. Just going slow, but there is something to be said for torching that sucker and then peeling off that burnt layer to find the perfect gooiness inside, right? So the kids like that trick, so they like setting it on fire. They say, "Dad, peel off the crusty skin on the outside so I can get the good bit inside,"
What about yours? What's the preferred method?
Oh, I always used to find myself trying to get a perfect roast on all the way around. Like I'd want it to be even, totally all the way around, and it would annoy me if it didn't quite make it, and I'd just want to start again.
I just had an idea. Why don't we make a marshmallow rub? You could make rubs to, like, you got meat rubs. You can make marshmallow rubs. You put rubs on marshmallows and then cook them.
They're already coated in powdered sugar. What else do you want on there?
I don't know. Like, that's what I'm saying. Surely, this is a new idea. This has to be a thing. We can make this a thing.
I think you might have to.
It's not the best money making idea I've had.
Where you burn the outside off, and then you can pull the coating back off, and then like roll it in something. I could see that happening, right?
Oh yes,
That's not bad.
Look at us go, solving the world's problems.
One marshmallow at a time.
It'd have to be something bitter, like a lemon powder, like the sour face lollies or something like that. Like something, bang.
Talking like a grown up. I like it.
Punch to the face. That'd be good. Yeah, sweet as. All right. I think we get into this book 3 of Plato's Republic. So, I'll put my hand up straight away, and I've only done one read through this week, so I'm not as normally prepared as I normally am. I do have my book here in front of me, pages open. How did you guys go with your prep this week? Did you get any time to focus on it, Lachlan?
Yeah, look, I did about the same as I usually sort of do, so I'm reasonably well prepared. I guess like we could probably sort of say we might be sort of going over a little bit of the similar sort of topics, because it just kind of, this book kind of runs straight on from book 2. As I mentioned before, we're all running off some slightly different versions of the book. So we had Ribs sort of running ahead on us a little bit there. So
yeah, that was my bad. I'm not even entirely sure where I'm up to at this point. But I think, last week I touched on a couple of things that we weren't actually up to yet. So I don't know whether you guys want to comment on those things. I remember one of them was a comment on a statement that they want their warriors to fear slavery over death. So I don't know how far, was that. So that's part of chapter 3.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, it's more or less like they like we finished book 2 and they were still talking about various types of writing, and then they start sort of going on to this kind of writing that's going to instill courage in their men, and basically want them to have that position where they're going to fight to the death rather than think of giving up. So that's that whole thing Rubes is saying about, have that fear of enslavement as a fate worse than death. So, as with what they were talking about with some of the other stuff last week, really they're just talking about sort of censoring, I suppose, like a bunch of classics where that kind of situation may have happened. So they're trying to sort of set this example for their guardians of this imaginary city that they're creating, and they want those guardians to learn from these texts. So they want to set that example for them.
Yeah, nice. I still think of Destiny every time someone says guardian. That game has just ruined that word for me.
You just got to channel Zavala's voice the whole way through, Tim, so that.
Oh, you're going to upset some people. Team Zavala will be cheering, but there'll be other teams that won't be happy.
I don't reckon you could do it in chorus somehow.
Sorry, Rubes, what was that?
I don't mean to shoot. I don't know whether I'm shooting too far ahead again, but he actually changes what they call not too far into the future. But in case you're not up to that, I won't tell you what it is. You'll just have to wait.
I might have missed that.
No, I think it might be further on.
So they start using the darkness instead of light or something. Yeah. Sweet. All right, so let's get into it. So what's the first part of chapter 3 here? What are they on about? Or book 3?
Yeah, so I mean that was kind of like the first sort of step into it. And then they just sort of start talking about a bunch of other things about, so related to that, it was also about like censoring particular words, particularly relating to Hades, the river Styx, and things that we're talking about, like sort of ghostly apparitions and all of that sort of thing that might weaken the nerves of their guardians. And in basically anything that's kind of contrary behavior that they don't want to sort of see in the guardian. So there's stuff about like weeping like Achilles after he's lost his, I can't remember who it was that he lost, but so there's all this stuff about like if you're like sort of like wailing like a woman about having lost somebody, then that's unseemly behavior. So we should sort of remove that stuff as well.
Is that when his cousin dies or something?
I can't remember the story of Achilles, to be honest.
Is it Hercules or Achilles that you're talking about?
Achilles.
Achilles. All I remember is that Brad Pitt movie.
Right.
I remember his dropkick cousin puts on his helmet and then gets wrecked.
Well, they do actually kind of. Well, they don't talk about the movie in this, but the movie references that obviously. Like, doesn't he drag his body off in that movie? That's part of. They talk about that in this, where they say basically we can't have this hero Achilles be stealing someone's body just for money. They're like, that's not acceptable. That was another thing that they wanted to take out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if we touched on this last week about Stoicism, but more or less that's what they're sort of talking about, though. Like in the face of some, tragedy of like losing your kinsman or what have you, as you fighting a battle or something, that you should remain stoic because it'd be unseemly to wail like a woman. More or less is what they're sort of saying at the loss of.
I highlighted a quote for that too. Like when they're talking about the goals of shaping them, they say that they want it so that the loss of son or brother or of property or anything else of the kind will hold the least terror for the good men.
Yeah.
He will least be affected by them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. And then it goes on to say, so when any catastrophe of any kind overtakes him, he will lament it less and bear it more calmly than others.
That's the key.
So I know that.
there.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know that Timmy, you've read a couple of the Stoics, but I read that bit. I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty much exactly sort of a precursor to that.
Yeah, Seneca, in what I've read, that last bit is the key. So his point is that as a Stoic, he kind of explains that it's still natural to get upset when someone you love dies. But what he says a Stoic should do is not weep at a level that's excessive.
but just bear
or
it more calmly than
unjustified.
others.
So like he acknowledges that there is a not a process, but
Yeah.
a currency that needs to be expended to deal with it, but to not over invest in that. To have your grief moment, and then you've grieved that, move on, get on with your life. Don't identify as a widow for the rest of your life and let that moment have this power over the whole rest of your life. That's powerful in an unhelpful way. So yeah.
I wrote in my margin the next paragraph down from that bit I just read, lol, because they go on to say if you want that sort of stuff in plays, we can give them to the less reputable women characters and bad men.
Yeah. Yeah, boy.
Yeah. I feel like we need one of those disclaimers that we don't the opinions put forward by Socrates are not necessarily the opinions
Not our own.
by the Republic of Man. Yeah, which I'm sure will be an issue for us more than once as we read this book. But it's Sorry, Lachlan, you were about to say something.
Oh, I was just sort of saying, like, basically, they sort of get to this point now where they sort of sum up all this stuff, that any sort of like display of weakness or references to the hell. And actually, they were talking about laughter as well, saying that bouts of uncontrollable laughter could lead to violence, which I thought was a really interesting. So I assume they kind of talk about like mocking someone, you know what I mean? And like laughing at someone's going to sort of lead to violence or something, or it's just looks like bad form, like you're a jerk, so you shouldn't do that, right?
I felt sometimes I was reading Australian culture as well, like
that's right.
laughing and being a smart aleck, sarcasm,
Totally.
all those different things. I'm like, this feels really familiar.
Yeah.
What do you?
As I was saying, like all of that needs to be stricken for the greater good. This is actually where something gets quite interesting. They start. They basically realize that they're starting to put in this position that they're kind of lying to these guardians of the city, and obviously they previously admitted like that lying is not really a good thing, but they're trying to achieve the greater good here. So there's a couple of quotes I've grabbed. One, truth should be highly valued if, as we're saying, a lie is useless to the gods and useful only as a medicine to man. And then they sort of lead on to, then if anyone at all is to have the privilege of lying, the rulers of the state should be the persons, and they in their dealings, either with enemies or with their own citizens, may be allowed to lie for the public good, but no one else should meddle with anything of the kind.
Whoa.
Yeah, I love that bit too.
Yeah. So, Ruben, what are your thoughts around, the first part around the whole laughter and sarcasm being problematic for men, but then also this
I think that just points to the element. Yeah. Well, firstly, it sort of just points to. I think what they're pointing at there is self-control. Like if you can't control yourself, like if you're if you're prone to bouts of hysterical laughter, then you've got self-control issues. I think that's all that's really saying. But it does sort of come across as if they're saying, like, don't have too much fun. Don't have too much fun now, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. As for the state, the lies of the state lying, I thought that was interesting. They're very matter of fact about it. They're just like, the state can lie. My only real thought about that was, I'd be against that. I don't agree with that at all. And I think they're almost contradicting themselves there, because they're sort of saying, that the gods wouldn't lie, therefore lying is bad. So why then would they make a special category for human authority? But I would remedy that to some extent by saying that there's a difference between lying and having state secrets. Like, I think a state needs to have secrets. There's certainly things that the populace shouldn't be privy to, and also other countries shouldn't be privy to. But I think lying is a different. I think lying is a different category of thing.
Well, I have something I'd like to table here. So let's think to America for a minute with this COVID thing. So when COVID first started hitting, my understanding is they told everyone, you don't need a mask, don't wear a mask. And their reasoning for that, apparently, was if everyone went and bought masks, then the frontline doctors and medical practitioners all would not have masks. So they needed to buy as many masks as they could in that first short period of time to make sure that all the frontline workers and doctors and medical practitioners had what they needed to stay as safe as possible. And then they changed the message to the public, actually, you do need masks. And to me, that's an example where they're probably justifying, well, we had to say an untruth or a lie at the initial stages for the good of the nation, and then change the message once the nation was prepared to deal with that. So to me, that's like a modern, now sort of recent example of a state doing that. And is that the right thing to do as a state? Was the American government, if that's what they did, right in doing that, or was that still wrong because they told a lie?
Well, I think either way, there's a price to pay, and I'm not familiar with that story, by the way, so I can't really comment on that too much. But just in general, you have to say
just use it as a hypothetical. Let's just say it happened as a hypothetical. Then.
Yeah. So I hypothetically, I mean, you'd have to sort of say that the people are going to lose confidence in a government that's going to flip 180 degrees over a short period of time to having one stance to another. They might understand the reason and the justification, but their level of trust, you'd have to assume, is going to get. And I guess it would just sort of depend on how many times that may well sort of occur as to when people sort of have no faith in their government. And, so I guess it might be a power that the government could wield, but they'd have to wield it pretty carefully and, use it rarely. Otherwise, they're just going to come across as, dropping falsehoods all the time. What could you trust?
So are you ultimately what you're suggesting is that it can be justified, but they should just use it carefully?
I don't know. I mean, it's I can understand that there's going to be grey lines, and things aren't always black and white. But so I think if you're going to consider to use that, you'd have to be very, very careful about how you do so. All I'm saying is that if you would choose to do it, you couldn't be frivolous with it. That's for sure. Do I support it? Don't know. I'd have to actually think about like the individual circumstance of whether it's worth it. You know what I mean?
So, would you agree that the argument there is essentially lying is wrong? But if there's a situation where there's a greater good can be achieved, that it's okay to lie?
I think that's exactly what they're putting forward. And
so we'd all agree that that's essentially the argument.
Well, I think it correlates with the argument they made previously where the friend asks for their sword back. But if they're not in their right mind, then you shouldn't give them the sword, because you're not doing the right thing by giving them the sword. So I think that's the same style of reasoning for their argument. It is, there's a by telling a lie, you're serving a greater good as the rulers than by telling the truth.
I think that's the intention that they're putting forward for sure.
I Look, I think firstly, I think there's another option, and the
Mm.
other option is not to speak on it. Like if,
Interesting.
like they don't have to say yes or no to masks. They can just say it's inconclusive, or we don't have a position on that. The best way would be to say we don't have a position on that right now,
Yep.
Even if they have a
or
position.
just not. Well, that would also be a lie, I suppose. You're right, but
Yeah.
I mean, there would be other way. I think there are other ways around it by withholding an answer. You could just flat out say, we're not going to answer that question right now. Yeah, and yes, that would lead to people sort of going, what's going on here? But it's then something that can be explained later, without having to say, yeah, we lied to you. I don't know whether that would do the equal amount of damage. But I think the second,
Well,
issue. Sorry, yeah, go.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that'd be fine the first time you sort of say that, but then each subsequent time that you get asked at the press conference, so what's your issue on this? I don't have a position on this right now.
Because last time,
okay, this one's going to be spicy, guys. Get ready, buckle up. Here we go. Like.
So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, I think your initial answer could be we're seeking further advice before we release any statement on that issue, but that'll only hold.
That's still a lie.
2 times
if they've
stops.
already made a decision. Yeah.
Well, it's not a lie.
I think it's
You're
one of
saying
those,
I'm seeking further advice before advising the public on this issue. That's not saying you
Except
haven't made a
if
decision.
but if you've already decided you're going to use that as a diversion tactic, you have made a decision.
No, but all you have to do to make that thing true is get another opinion before you say. So just call doctor
you're
number
setting
5.
us up.
I haven't spoken to you.
Go to one more doctor.
That's right. Okay, now we've got 5 out of 5. 4 out of 4 wasn't enough, but we've got 5 out of 5.
And but look, the other difficulty I have is I'll just put out a position, and you're welcome to tear it down. You can go all Socrates on it if you want, but I reject the idea that the consequence of an action dictates whether it's right or wrong.
Ooh.
So the example that usually gets trotted out is noble cause justice. So let's say you're a police officer, and you go to, I don't know, a crime scene, and for whatever reason you know that the person has done the wrong thing, but then you also know that you can't prove it, so you plant evidence on them so that they get convicted. Now, you've done something that's dishonest, you've done something that's corrupt, but you've done it for what could be considered a good outcome. Now, I say that that's wrong regardless. And that's probably makes it, it's probably more, unfortunately, that's probably a complex example, because you're then talking about judicial systems and blah, 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 and, how did you know they did it?
Sounds like
how could you know they did it and not be able to prove it? But essentially, that's the simplest example I can think of off the top of my head.
It sounds like a story.
I think
from
all you
True
have to ask
Detective.
yourself is, what would Batman do?
No, Batman's been corrupted. He's happy to take the blame for a kill that he didn't do.
He didn't do it. That's okay.
That is one of the stupidest scenes in cinema. I watched it again like about a couple of months ago. We're talking about the Christopher Nolan Batman, are we?
Yeah.
Where he takes the... Yeah, I remember watching that, and I was like, there's about 11 different ways you could deal with this better.
Yep, it was really, really dumb.
Anyway, but yeah, no. Is that pretty clear what I'm saying? Like, if that do you think that's a defendable position? That essentially, and I've got reasons why I think, like I've got reasons why I think that is the case.
Yeah.
What's that? You would agree?
I'd agree with you, Roops. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I think it's
if that is the case, then I don't see how you could make a special exception for government.
Well, what's the opposite? So if the outcome...
here we go. Here comes Socrates.
Well, I'm thinking, right. So what you're saying is the outcome isn't relevant to whether or not that's the right thing to do?
Consequence, he said.
Yeah, outcome consequence. I think the simplest way to say is that the ends doesn't justify the means.
Okay, so, but can the ends unjustify the means? So if you make someone a peanut butter sandwich because you see they're hungry and you try and do something nice, and then they die from being allergic to peanut, right? So the outcome made the deed a bad deed. I know it's a crazy analogy, but
For bad humans.
or what if okay, what if that police officer knows the guy's guilty, but he doesn't want to plant the evidence because he doesn't want to be corrupt. So then he tells the guy who is the waiter at the murder suspect's hotel that he's allergic to peanut butter and to make this peanut butter sandwich for him. Or doesn't tell him he's allergic to peanut butter but makes a peanut butter sandwich for him. And then he dies from the peanut butter.
So he gets him killed instead of gets him
Yeah.
convicted. That's worse.
Yeah, but the guy who made the peanut butter sandwich didn't do anything wrong. I think I just proved your point.
I'm not even sure. I'm lost.
No, but I just proved your point. Because the guy who made the peanut butter sandwich, even though he killed the guy, it didn't actually change the fact that he was trying to do something nice.
You lost me altogether.
See, this is why Socrates said he didn't know anything, because when you try and use his method, you just feel like a dumbass at the end of it.
So what you were trying to do there is, so typically what you're saying is Socrates will take an idea and then look at the total inverse of it, and if the inverse is incoherent, then he throws the idea out. Is that what he tends to do?
Yeah. I think that's part of the method, but I think what I just showed is by doing the opposite, it still demonstrated that what you said is correct. That even if they try and do the right thing and it results in them doing something wrong, well, what they did was like through the right heart and the right spirit, and it was still the right thing for them to do in that moment, knowing what they knew. Which is what Book 1 talks about, right? With people being fallible, that they make mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think...
But do you see, like what I tried to do is take your idea and look at it in the opposite outcome. So like you took a corrupt action getting a good result, but what about a good action getting a bad result?
Like it's a corrupt action. Ah, righto. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to flip it around.
So what do you say? Well... See, I struggle to answer that question because I've tried to operate in my own life that I would rather do the right thing and get the wrong outcome than do the wrong thing and get the right outcome. But I don't think you can. But but that's because I think my entire ethos is that the outcome is not what dictates the rightness or wrongness of the action.
You're operating within principles you've established, so why would you change your principles just for one thing that you can't kind of get to the result that you're looking for? Because it's almost like it's like making a fraud of yourself if you're willing to put your principles aside to do something that's against your philosophy.
Yeah, because there is a different paradigm to look at morality, and it's... What's that, sorry?
Oh, we've gotten deeper into this philosophy today than what I was expecting. So,
yeah, you're right. Because there's a different in my assessment. There's a different paradigm to look at it, which, and I could be wrong, but I think there's really roughly only two ways to look at it, and one is that what I just described, but then the other position is what's right and wrong is dictated by the end or the goal or the outcome. So the greater good, so to speak, and by that logic, it's just like, well, if you can achieve more good or more well-being or whatever quantifier you want to put on it, then you are justified in doing whatever. So I find this. I'm finding the Republic a little bit odd in that sense, but I also think that might be because they haven't got to the point where they've actually defined justice yet.
Yeah, we're not at the punchline.
Exactly. I think I said last week that I'm sort of expecting a twist to happen, and I'm still kind of waiting for it, because it sort of sounds like whilst they're trying to sort of set this perfect city up and perfect civilization, that in doing so they're going to build it with flaws, which is going to come out at some point in time. So it's going to be
they do compare. I think do they compare lying to in that sense with the state lying as a doctor's remedy?
They did. They very specifically sort of said that a lie is useless to the gods and only useful as a medicine to man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, anyway.
So it's beneath the actions of the gods, but they're men, so they're corruptible, so they can do what they like, right?
It's really funny because like 5 minutes earlier they're saying how crap all the gods are, and that we shouldn't try and be like them, and then 5 minutes later they're saying, "Oh, we don't have to be at the standards of the gods because we're just men." It's like, what?
But I mean, I think they're not even sort of saying that it's the standards of the gods. It's like the standards that we're going to write for the gods, because we know the gods don't have standards.
Yeah.
So frankly, like we're just putting this message out there. We don't believe it, and we're within our rights as the rulers of this city or what have you to bend and twist it for the greater good if we need to, because our morality is no worse than that of the gods. It's better.
Yeah, which is that's not a ridiculous statement. Yeah, so they sort of move on from there, and I think, unless I'm missing something, they kind of move on. They basically establish that we don't want any of these things in literature, and then I think they start talking about music.
Yes.
Am I skipping too far ahead?
I'm just checking if we missed anything else. No, I think you're pretty much there. Yeah.
There is a section where they talk about different types of literature, I think, where they say, you've got narrative literature and you've got representative literature, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that went on for quite a long time. They're going back and forward over, whether you're sort of narrating or whether you're, what was the word, mimicking like a character in the book or in a play or a book or whatever it may well be, and that if you're doing that you should only do it when you're doing it for basically the good character in the story, to give better emphasis to their their story and whatever may well be happening, and that you shouldn't be doing it for the evildoers or any position where somebody's showing a behavior that doesn't sort of fit in with those sort of things we've talked about before there, whether you're wailing over somebody's death or whatever it may well be. That's when they start to sort of talk about our friend the pantomime operator, which was an amusing sort of thing specifically to call out, because they could mimic the sounds of animals or thunder and a woman's voice or this, that, or the other, and they seem to like agree that those guys are like really skillful, they're really entertaining, and kids love them. Outlaw them.
Yeah, that's right. We like him, but we'll say to him, your skill is not without merit, but this is not for us. On your way.
Yeah.
I think they even talk about paying him money.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
say you're amazing,
but we'll tell them not for us.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the Blues Brothers. Yeah, where like Yeah, we play all kinds of music, country and western. Like they just have no place
Exactly
for
right.
it. They're not going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just try that other town just down the road a bit further. I'm sure they'll be into it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I think their
yeah, it's
conclusion
interesting.
off the back of that. I think their conclusion off the back of that is interesting, though. And I think I've written this quote down wrong, but they essentially come to the conclusion that, and they sort of talk about, you know, if our young are going to play roles and if they're going to be guardians, they should only play the noble roles and they shouldn't play these other roles because it's going to be bad for them. But they basically say that, and this is the quote I wrote down: imitations of youth continue far into life and grow into habits and become second nature. So they're basically saying
Hmm.
we don't want them doing this because the repetition might turn into a habit, which will then make them, less good in later life. So I thought that was an interesting idea. I think there's probably some truth to that.
Well, I recall as a kid when The Simpsons first came out, parents were a bit sketchy on whether or not you should watch it. And I remember my grandmother, who's still with us, having this very serious conversation with me that I didn't really understand at the time at all. Basically, saying just that, that if you watch these shows, they will impact the way you think, and it'll change your behavior. And I was just like, what are you talking about? I had no idea what she was talking about and thought it was like just old people things. But
Yeah, but
it's
it's clear
it's
that
100%
Socrates
right.
thinks it does.
Well, I recall being in my 20s and realizing that was true. Realizing the music I listened to impacted the way I would speak sometimes. That things I watched change your opinion. I remember even watching Scrubs, and one of the characters in that, one of the main doctors, who's just, what's the right word? He's just an absolute grub sometimes with the way he treats people. I used to find that hilarious, and then I'd just find myself every now and then just saying a sentence that was of the same sort of nature to that guy, and I realized, it's not bringing out my best self. So it's true. I think it's true. What do you guys think? What do you think, Ruben? What are your thoughts?
Oh, I can think of an instance where I've done the same thing. I joke a lot at work, and and sometimes those jokes might be a little bit off color. But I've always sort of held this idea that you should roughly be able to, like, without being malicious, you should roughly be able to joke about whatever you want because, like, joke is a release mechanism. But then I realized I used to like that show, The Office, and how the main character, that's the American version, I forget the actor that plays him, but he's always banging on about, for the sake of comedy, and I should be able to say whatever I want for the sake of comedy. And I rewatched that recently, and I realized, hang on, is the only reason I think I should be able to joke about anything I like because I've, like, subconsciously imbibed that person's character.
Steve Carell's character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how he comes out and he says all that really offensive stuff, and he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but it's a comedy bit. It's a comedy bit. What's wrong? I'm just trying to make you laugh. And I'm like, oh, hang on. That doesn't really add up. That's a joke.
The other
Am
thing
I, am
about
I
that
like
show,
acting out this joke?
yeah, the other thing about that show on a second watch is you realise that Jim's an absolute cock.
Oh, yeah.
He's
I
such an
found that
idiot.
too.
Yeah, I was like, he's
Yeah.
actually an absolute bully of a grub. Like,
Yeah,
I
he's
don't
a
know why
dick.
Dwight doesn't shoot him. Like, some of the pranks are funny. Like the stapler in the jelly is a favourite of mine. I saw that.
Classic.
I'm like, I need to do that one day. I'm gonna do that to somebody one day who can take it because it's hilarious. But some of the pranks he does, man. Oh. Have you watched it, Lachlan? Have you watched the US Office?
Bits and pieces, yeah, yeah. Not a hardcore watcher, but I've seen enough of it to know what you're getting on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
But
it's
yeah, no,
it's
I
a
think
good
there's
show.
certainly some truth in in what you consume is going to have an effect on you in some capacity. But the other thing that occurred to me when he's talking about imitations of youth is, like, I only know roughly from the outside looking in, like what you hear about the way that monasteries work. Like, how they have like a really regimented, like, I don't know whether they still do, but in medieval times they had a really regimented system where it's like you get up at 4 a.m. and you pray, and then you go and do X, and then you go and do Y, and it's the same every day. And I think the idea behind that was that by imitation, you'll continually grow these habits, which will then affect your mind and your soul eventually. I'm just wondering if that's a similar idea.
You're probably right. I mean, you could probably, I think we were talking previously about some of the stuff. I think Tim might have been talking about it with the, the kind of training, like, the Spartans and what have you would have been doing. And it was just kind of like an ethos that kind of just infiltrated the way that they operated in their psyche. And it was just kind of probably that repetition that just kind of formed that in their brain, the way that they would operate. Exactly like you're saying, Rubes, like just that regimentation there.
Yeah, a lot of guys talk about that now, even that repetition builds momentum. And that's 100% right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to form a new habit, I mean, that's what you got to do is repetition to sort of get in. Yeah, absolutely get that sort of steamroller rolling. So there's definitely merit in that.
At any rate, Socrates' conclusion out of it is that basically men ought not act as women, slaves, or madmen. That was my note.
Is it all women, or was it bad women? I can't recall what my translation said.
I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting. It was interesting that they kind of just threw like women in there next to slaves and madmen. And I'm like, ooh, that's not so acceptable these days.
My gran loaned me my grandfather's Bible for a few months, and I took some photos of it. And there was a part where Paul said something about women being silent in the church or something like that. And my pop had circled it and written "oops" in the column. That cracked me up.
Yeah, that sounds like 1 John.
Yeah. I just thought it was very funny. My pop, like, he must have written that 40, 50 years ago. He just wrote that. Oops.
Oops. Oh dear.
All right.
So I think at that point, they go on and start talking about. They're like, "Oh, now we're done with poetry and literature. Now they start talking about music."
Yeah.
Look, I can't really follow it.
Yeah, the music bit is pretty hard to follow, but.
Well, I think the conclusion off the back of it is basically he comes to a conclusion that simplicity in music is the parent of temperance in the soul. So he kind of comes to this conclusion that behaving like whatever type of music they identify, I'm not entirely sure, is going to affect the temperance of the soul. That's kind of my takeaway.
There's some truth to that.
I think they would. Yeah, I think they were trying to find like some militaristic sort of strings of music that would stir the soul and, like, make you sort of swell to greatness in those moments that you needed it. And they wanted to get rid of some of the music that would basically encourage drinking at the pub, and it was kind of like
melancholy.
And this sort of like a lighthearted sort of. I don't know, like almost like it's like frolicking or something like that. It was kind of the way they wrote it. So it's like, get rid of that stuff. That's got no use whatsoever for these guys. So.
But Tim, you were saying you reckon there's some truth in that?
Oh yeah, I'm, as you know, I'm very moody, and I also have a very broad range of music that I listen to. So when I read that part around simplicity in music, I was like, man, these guys never heard jazz. Jazz doesn't make you angry. Jazz makes you calm. Jazz makes you relax, and it's definitely.
But it's also That's right, and it's also discordant at times.
Well, you guys both love your
Yep.
jazz more than I do. So, I mean,
Yeah,
do you feel that Socrates is wrong about this? That simple structured music is calming?
for sure. It's really interesting too. Like he like calls out flute. He's like flute has no place in our town. Kill it, you know, like
I'm like that
that's
with
a,
harpsichord. I can't stand the silent sound of a harpsichord.
I thought you were going to say bagpipes.
I think yeah, well, you know, there's something to be said there. But no, there was some certain sort of harmonies and
Whoa,
things that
whoa, whoa,
they
whoa,
didn't like
whoa!
the
I was
kind
halfway through swinging a beer, and you just bagged out bagpipes. What the hell?
of
Come on, man! Did you ever hear Corn? Did you ever hear Corn do bagpipes live?
not a corn
Oh,
man, sorry. I'm not corn fan.
wow! I'm going to send you a link. It will change your mind. Bagpipes can rock. They can be awesome. All right, I've defended bagpipes. Continue.
That's right. That's right. I have heard a couple of instances where they might have been all right. Yeah, so yeah, you're the voice with John Farnham, right? That was great.
Yes.
So, um, yeah, so I think he's like kind of trying to call out some specific sort of harmonies and things like that. It was really hard to follow some of that stuff, but yeah, I think anything that wasn't like very structured and simple, and I just sort of thought that's got to be such a hard thing to enforce in a society because you know if this is only constrained to your city and your town, you know what happens when your soldiers go to another town, right? You know, inevitably you're going to get like some kind of exposure to some different sounds. You know, this place has got some really unusual music. I kind of like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's something about music that even if you're not into it, you can just hear something and it just hits a spot in you and resonates. And I think that would be true of any age that you would have come from, whether it's now or 2,500 years ago. And you know, you just hear something, and go, yeah, "That's really cool." You know, like I like that. It'd be
Yeah,
bang. You know, like
it's more
I just can't
intuitive.
sort of. Yeah, you'd have to think it's got to be a really hard thing, and like particularly because you know musicians by their nature aren't people who put boundaries on themselves. And I don't know. I just think it'd wind up. You'd have to wonder if you'd end up with this situation as like 2,500 years ago, if you're having an underground jazz club in Athens or something, right? Because these musos are getting together, they've got something they want to get out of them, you know. And
You got
no doubt they'd
to you got to turn that into a movie script somehow. That's a great idea.
have hot Athens nights. That's it.
Yeah, Socrates
Starring-
so flute.
Yeah,
That's
starring
it.
John Cleese.
Hey, have you guys read that there's a percentage of people when they hear music they can fully get like goosebumps and stuff from it? I know that's true because that's me. There's music that if there's a particular couple of songs that if I hear it at a certain point every time I will get goosebumps on my arms and shoulders. I just feel the music. It's a weird thing. Are either of you like that, or you don't get a physical reaction to music?
I don't think I get anything sort of physical about it, but certainly, I mean, it's definitely like a mood enhancer, though, right? I mean, you know, there's some things that it just it'll pick you straight up as soon as you get it. But yeah, no, not sort of like hairs on the back of the neck sort of stuff, or not for me anyway. I'm a big music guy, but yeah, I would envy that. I think because it's kind of
it's
like
good, but it's also weird. How about you, Ruben?
I wonder about music because you know how there's different types of language. Like you've got language which is pure information content, like A plus B equals C, blah blah blah. But then you've got persuasive language, which doesn't necessarily have to have that information content, but it's persuasive, and that's called rhetoric, right? I wonder if music is basically pure rhetoric, like it's pure persuasion, without the information content in the same way. I think that's a really abstract way to describe it. And that's a thought I've had for a couple of years, but I've never really explored it. So I don't know whether that's a reasonable way to look at it. But I do sometimes wonder if, music is just pure rhetoric.
Unless you're playing the record backwards and hear the devil.
Yeah, well, that's where you get the dialectic content. Yeah, that's where you get the information. Like if you want
to... Yeah. I've been to a jazz bar with you before, Rubes, and that was magic. Remember that one with that old dude who would like chant at his piano?
The jazz 3-piece, the piano.
Yeah, that was mad.
And a set of drums. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, I was feeling that there, man. That was awesome. Yeah. So anyway, I feel for these guys that are getting kicked out. Well, these fake guys, they're getting kicked out of this fake place.
That's right.
But I think the lessons of the music are basically the same as the other period. As the literature, because I think they didn't put music and literature in the same category anyway.
Basically,
they did, and more or less, I think they sort of said the words to the music would fall under the same sort of categories. So, they'd be censored in much the same sort of way, as far as the content went.
Yeah.
So, cool. Where did you end up your reading this week, guys? Because I think I blew past it again by accident.
Yeah, that's okay. We can sort of stop there. I reckon that'll about do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to stop there too. Sweet as. Well, that was good. That was a good conversation. We've got another good little conversation to do before we wrap it up. So let's head on down to the pub for lots of us and insert jingle, which I still haven't got done. But all right, so our topic for the pub for lots of us. So through the week, I came across some news online, which I wanted to talk to these guys about on the show, which I shared with some other family as well, which I found very concerning. And the article was not from a well-known news source, so we had to find more information about it. But essentially it was saying that scientists have managed to make a half man, half monkey embryo. Is that the right word?
Yep.
So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about how's that a thing? What do we think?
I've got a quick dive into ancient Greece for you here, if you want to have it.
Oh, okay, go.
So, so this is the start of an article written by The Guardian. So they quoted, when King Minos of Crete was given a magnificent bull by the sea god Poseidon for a sacrifice, he could not bring himself to kill it. In anger, Poseidon enchanted Minos' wife, Pasiphae, to be filled with lust for the creature, and the result of their trans-species mating was the bull-headed monster, the Minotaur. So they start talking about hybrids of humans and animals from that point on, which is called a chimera.
Yes, well, that's the word they use in the articles. So it's human cells grown in monkey embryos,
which is an ancient Greek word as well.
Debate. Yeah. So I think the reasoning for this, I understand, is, well, I don't think they want Planet the Apes. I think what they're trying to do is figure out a way to grow organs for humans without using human embryos. By using monkey embryos, but then pumping them full of human cells. I don't understand why that's more ethical than just the alternative, because I don't think either are ethical. But yeah, this is a weird thing, and I just wanted to talk about it on here because I thought it'd be interesting. We're working through philosophy and these different ideas, and this is a bit left field.
What would you say? I mean, you just said that it's unethical. What would you say is unethical about altering a monkey
embryo? I think That's the right question. And at what point isn't it? So let me see if I can get my brain to catch up with your question. So the first part I would say is where are we getting the human cells from, and where is the monkey embryo coming from?
So there is a bit of question about where that the human cells come from, and it sounds like this is like leftovers from IVF sort of situations at times. And there was some question called out in this Guardian article about whether people, if they knew what they were being used for, would actually be okay with their genetic material being used in that manner.
And you'd have shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I don't know, like there's no sort of like specific accusation about that, but they're just saying like that is an ethical question that needs some pondering.
Imagine getting that email from Ancestry.com in like 100 years. Like, you're linked to this half monkey thing.
You mean Uncle Kong?
Uncle Kong. That's awesome.
It's alright. Or it's like this John Doe died. We don't know who he is, but his liver is definitely related to you somehow, and a monkey.
Yes.
Funny enough, scary, Tim, this stuff has actually been going on for some time because they've been trying. They'd been doing this with rats, which unsurprising because they're always used in labs, and they were, I think, able to get I don't know, some human cells to survive in rat whatevers. But rats are obviously a small creature and unable to grow an organ that is human-sized within them, right? So they've moved on and they've been experimenting with pigs for a while.
Right.
Pig's a bigger animal. They were trying to grow, I think, like theoretically, to be able to grow, like, say, like a spleen or something like that. In the pig, that would be with, human thing, just for the spleen, not within the rest of the pig, but just like to be able to culture this thing within the pig. And what they found is that humans were too distantly related to the pig, like our
on the tree.
Our paths diverged too far apart, and so the human cells wouldn't survive in the pig. And so that's why they've gone and said, okay, let's try this now with monkeys, because they're a bit closer to us in sort of history. So that's where that's where they're coming from.
So I was watching the BBC video on YouTube. I'll try and remember to put the link in the description for this episode. And they had a scientist person on there, and they were asking her like, "Oh, what's the go with this?" And like, "Oh yeah, we kind of really don't know what we're doing. Like, is the 50% human the part that's the brain of the monkey? Is that then ethically wrong to do this, or is the 50% just for organs? We don't know." Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just, I was like, what?
Fairness to them,
let's throw it together and see what happens.
That was a hypothetical question I put to them, because no one's actually doing is what was clear to me.
Allegedly.
That's right.
I'm with you there, man.
There is some, and like you can still say this is unethical, but what they're doing, they're not growing or inseminating into any animal to grow it into an animal. They're just using it at this point in time, right, to study this cell development. And then when it hits, I can't remember what it was like 28 days or something like that.
It can't be 28. It has to be 20. We can't have 28 days later as a series, and then we're doing tests at 28 days with apes. No, it can't be a thing.
No, I think they're saying because that's when the nerves or something connected or something or other. So there's some line ethically that has been drawn at some time in the past that sort of says up until that point in time it's okay to study the genomes or whatever it is, and after that it becomes unethical because you're allowing the gestation process to continue or something like that, right? But there does seem to be some like some good discussion that they do want to discuss the ethics around this situation because it's developing a lot quicker than where the ethics are at. So the ethics have to hurry and catch up to what's happening with the science.
That's very similar to robotics and virtual reality. Yeah.
Well, same with, I don't know if you saw this week, maybe it was last week, with Elon rolling out with the Tesla robots. Did you see those? Yeah. And it was just smacking of iRobot already. And it was like literally like building the example from the movie. And I was like, oh man, we got like Planet of the Apes on this story. We've got iRobot happening on the other story. We're doomed, you know.
Yeah, wasn't the Elon Musk one where he's like, yeah, I've built a robot, but he's really easy to break, so you don't have to worry about killing you.
Yeah.
Isn't that roughly?
But he's full paranoid. He's full paranoid about AI though. So
yeah, which really surprised me, to be honest, that he was developing this, because he's been quite outspoken saying that humankind's running towards AI like way too fast. We're basically building a machine that's going to outnumber our intelligence too quickly.
Yeah, I was watching an update yesterday on robotics, and Ford are making a delivery van that comes with a delivery robot. They're starting to develop that, and so the robot hops in and out of the back and carries the parcels for you to your door. And there's other companies, so you know how you've got the Boston Dynamics dog that they use at SpaceX and other places. So there's other companies now making their own robotic dogs, and they're saying that within 12 months you'll be able to buy one for the price of the top of the range iPhone for like $1,500 to $1,800. This fully robotic dog that can move it up to, I think it was 12 miles an hour. And if you go for like a run, it can run with you. It can see obstacles and move around them and not get in the way. It'll be like $2,000 for a fully autonomous robot dog thing to run around with you. Like it's coming very fast. It's coming very fast, and they're talking about delivery jobs and warehouse jobs and truck driver jobs. All those jobs disappearing within a generation. It's different.
Yeah, I mean, look, this stuff's obviously happened in the past with things like the Industrial Revolution, but they just happened so much slower. And I think there was a time where people could reskill and, but just because there was that kind of time frame, you could see things happening, you could see things coming, and you could start to move away or move towards something else. It seems like things are moving very quickly now, but I don't know. Maybe that's what they thought back then as well, like how quickly things were moving. I'm not sure.
I want to come back to Ruben's original question around the ethics. I've spent a bit of time on this, so like here's a question. I don't know if it's helpful, Ruben, but if you were, as a scientist, wanting to see what happens if you put the two cells together, is there any landscape where that's ethically okay? And so I'll put forward an example. So right now we're using embryos that no one wants, combined with monkey embryos to make this experiment happen. You know, and I'm sure that heaps of people would say, human embryos are sacred, their life, you shouldn't do that. So, could you use discarded human cells, such as nail clippings, to do the same thing if there was a way to do that? Does that then mean it's more ethical, less unethical, okay, or still equally unethical? I would personally think probably equally unethical still. What's your thoughts?
Well, without having given it too much thought, just off the top of my head, I tend to agree. If you're using embryos, using life, I fall well on that side. That that's unethical. You can't use that. But I think, like I said, just off the top of my head, if you're using what you just called discarded cells, like skin cells or even blood samples or whatever, discarded cells, and you want to do things with that. I, in principle, don't have any issue with trying to combine that with the DNA of other animals.
How about
I
you?
can't, off the top of my head, see anything wrong with that.
How about you, Lachlan?
I guess I've got more concern, I guess, about just where it takes us. The experiment that they're sort of starting with is harmless enough, but I mean, what's the point of doing it if the end game is to, I don't know, breed half human monkeys to harvest organs from? Like, if that's what your end game is, the ethics up front make no sense anyway, because the end goal you're trying to achieve is unethical.
You're
So
right. Like
so
if
why even start?
yeah, you're right. The
So would
question
you
may
say
be
it's
then.
unethical? Would you say, are you saying it's unethical to have, let's say hypothetically speaking, you can breed a monkey with a human heart, and when it comes time to needing a human heart for a human, you just kill the monkey and take the heart out? Are you saying that that's unethical? Provided that
I don't
monkey
know.
is
I mean,
cared for until the point of death?
I think like the question they've got is that at what point, when you've included some human genetics into a creature, does this become that you're essentially trying to harvest basically something that's part human? And
Mm.
if you've got a problem with killing
Yeah.
your fellow man and you're killing a creature that's part man, at what point do you feel squeamish about that? If it's 1%, you
Yeah, I
probably don't
think I'd
feel too
agree with you on
squeamish
that.
about it.
Yeah.
Um,
See,
I think I'd agree with that. Just out of pure like playing it safe, I think I'd have to just say it's got to be 0%. Like anything above 0%, and you're in trouble.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say you're going to have like some, like, unless you're a vegan, right? It's kind of hard to say that you got some principles against animals, I think, being used uh, for food
Human
or human
consumption.
purpose, right?
well, you're
Um,
you're exactly right. Because I was thinking, is it ethical to breed monkeys to take organs from? If they were just monkeys, not, let's say we find a new species of monkey on some island in the Bermuda Triangle that we never found before, and miraculously their livers, are
Work with
compatible with
humans.
ours. Hallelujah, because
yeah,
then is it right to breed a crap ton of those monkeys and use them for, well, a lot of people, I think, instinctively their immediate reaction would be, no, you can't do that. But then when you point out, well, I eat bacon twice a week, how many
yeah,
pigs am I responsible for dying every year? I eat eggs almost every day,
yeah, leather
steak.
shoes.
Yeah, like, we do this. So is the
Hmm.
line
Yeah,
the human genetics? And then the evolutionists will say, well, we're only 5% different. So if we're introducing 50% us, now we're only 2.5% different. So we're arguing over 2.5%. Like, it's very difficult to know where the line is, I think, which is why I wanted to talk about it.
I think you can
um,
have a look at what.
Sorry, Ruben,
I
you
was
want to
just
say
going to say, I
something
think
on
you can see the difference you're having from that small percentage, though, when you look at what man does and creates versus monkey, right? So,
it?
so I think the small percentages are worth arguing about.
I agree with that. Off the top of my head, as you were saying, instinctively, most people would have a problem with it. Instinctively, if you had monkey organs that worked with humans, I would have absolutely no problem with breeding them to use the organs. Just I don't have an issue with that. But I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of percentages. But I would um, reject the premise that, you know how you said, like, oh, the difference between human and monkey DNA is a small percentage or whatever. I think I'm roughly saying the same thing as what Lachlan did. I would reject that premise. I don't think that is a valid comparison. Like, that's because I would reject the entire evolutionary paradigm in the sense that because we have similar building blocks, therefore we are similar. I don't think that's true.
I agree with you. I'm saying what the evolutionists would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I agree. And I think that's soul, right? That's the spirit, or consciousness.
Well,
You know, it could.
I think even more simply than that, that's like saying if you take bricks and you build, I don't know, let's say you build a furnace, or you take bricks and you build something else, say a dog kennel. That's like saying those two things are a certain percent the same. It's like, no, just because they have similar building blocks, those bricks, doesn't mean they're the same thing. It doesn't even mean they're similar.
So purpose defines them.
Perhaps.
It's challenging. This is good. This is good fun though. This is the type of philosophy I enjoy. I call this is definitely pub philosophers philosophy. Well, that was a good chat. So I don't think we've ended anywhere conclusive. Maybe we have. Do we agree that it's not for us?
I would agree. Yeah, the splicing of the human DNA into the animal. Yeah, I'd be against it.
Yeah, because I just can't see an end game that I'm going to be happy with. So why do it at all?
Yeah. Yes, I think that's
just
I think
thinking.
that's right.
One other sort of weird. Sorry, mate. I was just saying one other weird thing though. Like, you know, let's say, you know, they did sort of harvest a liver or something in a monkey and transplant it into a man. I don't know how cool I'd be with that. You know what I mean? Like, you may wind up with a bit of like monkey genetic material getting into the human gene pool as well. I know, like, they're sort of saying they're trying to create this human genetic material inside the monkey as a vessel, right? But I don't know. I mean, you'd have to worry about, you know, if you're going to accidentally sort of like wind up with maybe that vestigial tail is going to sort of turn up on one of your kids later on or something. You know, I don't know. Do you
I have
really
no
want to
idea
pollute
whether it works that way, but you wouldn't take the chance.
Imagine the shoes you'd have to buy.
Yeah, I just don't think you'd want to pollute your gene pool with the chance that, and I'm obviously tongue in cheek about the vestigial tail, but yeah, but you know, just inputting something into your gene pool that you shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
By accident, and science happens, right? So,
However it
you know,
got in there, yeah. However it made its way in there, you don't want it.
nah, I don't need that.
Well, that was
Anyway,
fun. Thanks,
I'll
guys.
stop there.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. So we'll wrap it up. So yeah, thanks everyone who's been listening. We'll catch you next week, and remember, the Republic of Man wasn't built in a day, and neither are middle-aged men. So have a great week, and gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
All the best, guys.
Speak on. Catch ya.
Thanks.